When we add a new attribute in a transaction, that attribute is automatically created as an attribute object in the KB, and that is why it can be used elsewhere. For example, the category ID attribute of the category transaction, once it is created in this transaction, remains as an attribute object at the KB level. And that is why, when we add the category attributes in the attraction transaction, as soon as we start typing their names, they are already suggested as an option to add, since they are attributes of the KB and not only of the category transaction. The category ID attribute is used in two transactions, categories and attraction, with two different roles. So far, we don't know how to work with the attribute at the KB level. We only know how to work with the attribute in each transaction. For example, when we select this attribute in the structure of the category transaction, the properties window shows, in addition to the type definition properties we've already worked with, these first two, KB object and name. This will be the name of the attribute at the KB level. Note that the values of all these properties will be the same as those of the properties of the same attribute, but now in the attraction transaction. What happens if we change any of these property values here? For example, these ones. Will that be a global change, or will it affect the attribute locally in just this transaction? It will be a global change, which may not be intuitive at first. For example, if we reset the based on property to its default value, we will see that change reflected in the attribute in the category transaction. Since it is a global attribute property, any change, regardless of where it is made, will affect the attribute at the KB level, and thus in every place where the attribute is used. On the other hand, some properties will apply only locally. These are not configured from the Properties window, as all properties listed there are global. For example, nullable is a local property. This is because it affects how the attribute will be configured in the corresponding database table. For the attribute in the category table, where it serves as a primary key, it clearly cannot be null. However, for the attribute in the attraction table, it can be. The category ID attribute could even appear in another transaction, also referencing the category entity, and in that one it might not accept nulls. The nullable property is only found in the structure grid. It is not listed among the other properties. We have a window that allows us to work with the attributes of the KB without having to edit them inside a transaction. This is the Work with Attributes window. It lists all the attributes we have defined in all the transactions we have created so far. If we place the cursor on category ID, for example, we see the same properties as if we placed it on this attribute in the category or attraction transaction. In fact, if we redefine its data type here to be the id domain, we will now see this same definition both in category and in attraction. So, to modify the global properties of an attribute, this can be done either from the Work with Attributes window or from any of the transactions where the attribute is found. In all cases, from the Properties window. Although attributes are KB objects, they cannot be created outside the structure of a transaction. The Work with Attributes window allows modifying and deleting attributes, but not creating them. They also cannot be created from the New Object dialog. The following should be noted. If, while in the structure of a transaction, we want to rename one of its attributes, such as customer address, we should not do it directly in the structure grid by editing the name there. Instead, we must do it from the name property. This is because if we do it in the structure grid, we're actually creating a new attribute, not modifying the existing one. This becomes clear when we press F5. Or if we just want to see the impact on the database, we can select Build Impact Database Tables. The system is trying to create a new attribute named Customer Personal Address and delete the previous one, Customer Address. But that's not our intention. We simply want to rename the attribute. In the Work with Attributes window, we can now see both of them. If from here we try to delete the one we just created by pressing the delete key, it asks us to confirm the action. And once we do, we see that deletion is not allowed because the attribute is marked as being in the customer table, even though it doesn't physically exist yet, since the changes haven't been applied. What happens if we now remove it from the customer transaction, the only place where it's currently used? Now deletion is allowed. The customer address attribute is no longer in any transaction. But let's add it back into attraction. As we begin typing its name, it is suggested among all the attributes in the KB that start with those letters.